And 1 month from now, we will be complete with the NFL draft in Detroit, and all of our questions will be answered. So joining us right now, I have questions for him, the ESPN NFL draft analyst, Matt Miller, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Matt?
Rich, I'm doing well. Can't wait to see you in Detroit. We've got a couple of fun weeks of studying ahead of us. It's going to be a good time.
No doubt. So the pro days for the major college quarterbacks available in this year's draft are done. Now we're in the old top 30 visit portion of their evaluation. What is your evaluation of Caleb Williams? Do you agree he is the surefire, definite number one overall selection in this year's draft?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he should be. And that's Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears will have a fun decision to make. But I think everything that Caleb encompasses at the quarterback position, the talent he showed at Oklahoma and then the 2 years at USC, his ability to navigate, a tough change in his career, to play this past year at USC with, we're not talking about a lot of Trojans being drafted in the top 100 picks of this year's draft. So to play on that roster without superstar talent around him and still have a fantastic year individually, despite a tough record for them, I think he is the right quarterback to go to Chicago and finally give the Bears that franchise quarterback that they've been longing for my entire life, at least. A long time the Bears have been trying to find this guy. And I think Caleb is uniquely suited to go to Chicago and be that player for them.
Do you think Mahomes is the fair comp? I mean, that's all we've been hearing for a year plus, Matt. Do you?
Yeah, I'm the comp guy at ESPN, but I'm not going to go that crazy with it. I think you see some styles to Mahomes, his arm strength, his field vision, the way that he will drift, in the pocket to extend the play. All that is, he's borrowing that from Mahomes. I think that is a lofty, it would be like, compare someone to Tom Brady back in the day. I just don't want to do that. But I think there are styles of Mahomes, styles of Aaron Rodgers. I've said he reminds me a lot of a young Russell Wilson because I think he's also a more accomplished runner than a Mahomes or a Rodgers have really been in their career. Some of that's by design, but I think Caleb can be a dual threat quarterback. We certainly saw that at Oklahoma. So I see a young Russell Wilson who we have to remember was, back-to-back Super Bowls, was a top 5, top 6 NFL quarterback, certainly at times. So I think Caleb could be that type of player, but I just don't want to put the Mahomes expectations on anyone.
Well, the number one overall pick of the 21 draft, Joe Burrow had a Brady comp. There was a lot of folks who were saying, you know what?
There were.
And it's so funny that whenever that happened, or what you kind of just said about Mahomes and what everybody is saying about a comp for Mahomes, you always have to apologize before you do that because that is something you're slapping on the kid. Hey, I apologize for saying he reminds me of somebody who's an all-time great. But he kind of does, that's why he stands out, I think.
You're right. And I think the way you phrased it is why you're so good at this job, because you say he reminds me of instead of my NFL expectation for him is. So I think if we say, you know what, Caleb reminds me of Mahomes, he reminds me of Aaron Rodgers in this area and that area, I think that's really a responsible way to frame it. And you can draw into those comparisons. But, when it's one line in an article, people are going to say, oh, my gosh, Matt Miller compared Caleb Williams to Patrick Mahomes. If he doesn't win 3 Super Bowls in 5 years and completely change the way we evaluate quarterbacks, he's going to fall short of that. So, yeah, there are certainly characteristics that remind you of those guys. And that's why he's being considered, one of the greatest quarterback prospects probably since Andrew Luck and probably over a Trevor Lawrence, over a Joe Burrow because of that dual threat ability that he brings to the game.
And because you complimented me like that, Matt, you remind me of somebody very smart and astute. How does that sound? Right?
I like it. Okay, I like it.
Great.
Yeah.
So then moving on to number 2 overall, what's your evaluation there? Because that's going to be sitting, we all assume, into the laps of the Washington Commanders in a few Thursdays.
That is the fascinating pivot point in this draft. And my, kind of thought process has been that Cliff Kingsbury would go with Jayden Daniels out of LSU because of the style of quarterback that Cliff has liked in the past. What gets you in trouble, though, is Drake May has played in a Phil Longo air raid style system, which would work very well with what Kingsbury has done traditionally. You could even look at someone like J.J. McCarthy, Adam Peters, the Commanders' general managers, coming from San Francisco, where they've had a lot of success with an accurate timing-based quarterback in Brock Purdy. So you could look at all 3 of these quarterbacks and talk yourself into a really good scheme fit there. I still lean Jayden Daniels. I think the running ability that he has, the downfield passing ability, which is so great and would pair so well with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, and what they do want to do offensively. I go back to, and I know Cliff Kingsbury's just the offensive coordinator. There are a lot of other people there who are going to make decisions, but When he took the Cardinals job, they had Josh Rosen, who they traded up for the year before. He said day one, no, I want Kyler Murray because this is the perfect quarterback for my offense. Jayden Daniels is the closest player in this draft to that in terms of what he gives you as a runner and as a downfield thrower.
I mean, where do you stand on Jayden Daniels' 2023 season? Heisman Trophy, we all know that. And the comp or the analysis I hear most is that he's the one who's most pro ready, I guess. And on top of it, though, he's got Malik Neighbors that he's throwing to, though, right? I mean,
right.
So he's got some top-notch talent, and I guess you can then make that leap that, well, Terry McLaurin is pretty much top-notch talent in the National Football League as a for instance. And then you can marry the two, or you take a look at someone like Drake May or somebody like J.J. McCarthy, who's most, I guess, common analysis I hear, which drives me nuts, is he didn't have to do too much for Michigan, which is insane. But where do you stand on this evaluation of film and analysis for what the future could be, or just the inside guts of a quarterback position that's so tough to evaluate?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest miss rate for teams and for us in the media is evaluating quarterbacks. When I look at Jayden, though, Rich, I see someone who not only was he the best player in college football last year, with the Heisman Trophy, he was the most improved player in college football. Who he was in 2022 to who he became in 2023 is a very different player. He got better from within the pocket. He started trusting his arm more. He even started protecting himself more as a runner, as we saw over the course of this season. If you watch week one against Florida State and then watch him throughout the year, he starts doing a better job of protecting his frame. So even though Jayden is a little bit older than a J.J. McCarthy or a Drake May, we've seen him continue to improve. So I think there's still some meat on the bone. There's still room for him to get better as he, gets into an NFL system. But I'm with you. I was at the Michigan Pro Day. J.J. McCarthy, and I don't want to put too much stock into pro days. J.J. had a fantastic pro day, and you fall in love with the kid the more you're around him and you're around his family and the people that he has surrounding him in his corner. And you do understand why teams are talking about him now as he might be the number 2 overall pick in this draft. He's certainly someone I think will be a top 4 pick in this draft. So the more you are connected to people like J.J. McCarthy, and I had a GM tell me when I got in this business, quarterbacks are evaluated from January until the draft. You watch the film during that time, what they did in the season matters, but so much of the quarterback position is what you were talking about. It's the football IQ. It's the work ethic. It's the drive. It's the ability to overcome adversity. For a lot of these guys, the NFL will be the first time that they've, had a losing record in their career. So how do you handle things like that? And the more people I talk to, you hear the answer to that question is J.J. McCarthy, because of how well and how hard he was coached at Michigan, what was put on his shoulders as a team leader. And no, he didn't throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. But when he had to throw the ball, it was like, okay, you haven't thrown in 10 minutes, but now it's 3rd and 7. We need you to make a play. And he would go out there and consistently do that.
And plus, how about this? And I'll pound the table for him. How about this? At age 20, he's a 20-year-old where everybody feels the next step for him is the National Football League. And he had no idea, although he probably assumed that he was going to leave Michigan at the end of this year and go into the NFL. How about at age 20, in the first big nationally televised game of the year where it's all on the line and his head coach is suspended and the offensive coordinator is the interim coach, and that guy calls for 30 some odd straight run plays and he doesn't bat an eye. He doesn't complain. He doesn't go, what about my draft stock status? What about me? What about my future? He just keeps his head down and keeps winning football games. That has to count for something. That has to in an evaluation.
It absolutely does. Absolutely, because I do think we are in a little bit of an era, understandably, with college football where guys are looking out for themselves. NIL has changed that. Everyone is an individual now, much more than they ever have been before. So I haven't heard anyone say that before. I think that's an interesting point with JJ, and it says who he is, as a leader, as a player, to not have that what about me, kind of stigma, and to say, that's fine, against Penn State, we don't have to throw the ball in the second half. We're still going to win. And, I got maybe 15 minutes with him after the Michigan Pro Day. It was a fantastic conversation. I've spoken to his dad a couple times, spoken to his quarterback coach, Greg Holcomb, a couple times. And I'll tell you, watching the NFL head coaches, offensive coordinators, and general managers during his throwing workout, I mean, they're just salivating standing there. I mean, there was a nice bubble of people, and right up front was Josh McCown, the offensive coordinator of the quarterbacks coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And Cliff Kingsbury's there talking to John Beck, who's going to run the pro day. And, these guys are big decision makers offensively with these teams that are, drafting in the top 3 or will potentially be drafting in the top 3. So I think the closer we get, people, it's lying season, it's smokescreen season. Yes, but also the closer we get to the draft, I think the more concrete some of the information gets. And I just had a mock draft come out. I had JJ going 4th overall, and I wouldn't be shocked if April 25th he goes 2 or 3 as compared to 4 in this trade up that I had in the 7-round mock draft this week.
Matt Miller here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, let's check your mock work, sir. And you have 2 trades that will shock the system, to say the least, because they are coming up from 11 and 12 to go up to 3 and 4 respectively to get their quarterbacks of the future. You do have Caleb Williams going first to the Bears and Jayden Daniels to the Commanders. Why do you think the Vikings would trade all the way up for Drake May 3rd overall? What do you think is at play there, Matt?
Yeah, I think the Vikings are trading up, getting 11 and 23. The move to come back in with the Houston Texans 5 weeks before the draft would be very questionable if you weren't going to pair that to get into the top 3. I think right now it's more interesting that the Vikings, we know we're going to climb the ladder to get that quarterback. Who the quarterback is kind of reminds me of when San Francisco went up to get Trey Lance. They made that trade 5-6 weeks before the draft. No one knew exactly. We all thought it was Mac Jones for a long time. No one knew exactly who they were going up to get, but they gave themselves that time to narrow their list down of, do we want Justin Fields? Do we want Trey Lance? Do we want Mac Jones? They knew those were the guys who were going to be available. They ultimately made that decision on Trey Lance. I think Minnesota's in a similar spot where they know they can get to 3 or 4 now. They can at least get to 4 where the Arizona Cardinals are. So they just have to decide which of these quarterbacks do they like enough to do that. Now, will New England trade out of 3? I feel like sometimes I'm the only one who will say, I think the Patriots need to trade out. And now we're getting closer to the draft. We're starting to hear things that they're willing to listen to some of these offers, at least in a team that, they've got to rebuild the offensive line. They've got to rebuild the wide receiver room. Is that a spot where you want to throw a rookie quarterback into, especially someone 21-year-old like Drake May, who's a 2-year starter? Do you want to throw him into that system, or would you rather, build the team first and then put a Drake May in there? But I think for Minnesota, with Christian Darrisaw at left tackle, Justin Jefferson, probably the best receiver in football, Jordan Addison, who had a great rookie year last year, that's a really good framework for a young quarterback to come into and have a lot of early success. Whether you're May or McCarthy, that's where you want to go. You want to be with Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings.
Matt Miller here at NFL Draft Scout. Follow him on the old X machine right here on the Rich Eisen Show. And listen, Sean Payton trading up to go get J.J. McCarthy seems like an excellent marriage. That seems like some kid who can take the tough coaching from Harbaugh, Sean Payton in the Bill Parcells mode, and also an accurate passer, something that Drew Brees, we all know, is. And we always, with Sean Payton, we always assume he's looking for the next Drew Brees. I kind of dig that idea, Matt. I'm sure Denver would too.
Yeah, and that was honestly that went into it of who is someone that Sean Payton's going to sit with for 15 minutes and think, this guy can handle me. And if you can be coached by Jim Harbaugh for 3 years, I think you can handle Sean Payton as well. Some of the stories about the way Payton has coached in Denver, I think is a little bit new for some people, but I think JJ could absolutely withstand that and thrive in that environment. But also he is that timing-based passer who has poise, he has instincts. There's a throw against Ohio State that I'm sure you have memorized where the linebacker's head is turned around and JJ throws it right at that linebacker, knowing he's not going to get his head around, and his player is able to make a great catch on that ball. That's the stuff that I think Sean Payton's going to see and think, not only is JJ mobile, which is really important for his offense, but he's coachable. And to some degree, he's going to go out there and run the offense that you tell him to run. There's not going to be a lot of ad-libbing early in his career because he's been coached by a Jim Harbaugh who says, here's the offense. As you mentioned, Rich, we might run the ball 30 times in a row, but we're going to win, and that's all that matters. I think JJ and Sean Payton is really a perfect marriage in terms of personalities and also play style within the offense.
And then I guess in the category, Matt, of you can't make this up, the fact that J.J. McCarthy would be the 4th quarterback in a row taken and a team trades up to go get him, leaving Jim Harbaugh to be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr. to start off his return to the National Football League from Ohio State is something you cannot make up, you know? That would be something else. Certainly sending Keenan Allen to Chicago, Mike Williams walks to the Jets. There's Marvin Harrison Jr. for Justin Herbert and his new offense. That would be something else, right? I mean, that's exactly outside of trading the pick, which the Chargers might consider doing. That's what I was hearing at the Combine. That's what they wanted the most. But this would be the dream scenario for the Chargers. They don't need a quarterback. 4 other quarterback-needy teams take one, and he gets Marvin Harrison Jr. as the de facto first overall pick of the non-quarterback draft. You know?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's storybook. And it would be, does Harbaugh take an Ohio State player, though? I think that would be the question. Sure. Could he do it?
Oh, yes. Yes, Matt. Matt, absolutely he could do it. Those days are over. He's turned the page. It's gone. He can absolutely do it. And who knows better on how difficult it would be to stop Marvin Harrison and what his game is and what it means for an offense than the guy who tried to stop it and successfully did, quite frankly. It all said and done by winning, but that's the aside. But absolutely, Matt, he would do it in a heartbeat. No question. And
it would be perfect for Harbaugh. And I think the question, if it goes like this, comes down to Harrison or Joe Alt, the tackle from Notre Dame. And there's a great argument to be had for both players. But I think looking at this from a team-building standpoint, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Justin Herbert that is the matchup you want, especially if you're Justin Herbert. You're probably looking at your wide receiver room right now wondering, what are we doing? Where am I supposed to go with the ball? Especially, they even lose tight end Gerald Everett, who is a really valuable, passing game weapon. You lose Austin Eckler, very valuable in the passing game. So replacing some of those targets with a Marvin Harrison Jr., who is, every time I watch him, I think that's Larry Fitzgerald in today's game. 6'3", 210 pounds, 4.4 speed, beautiful ability to run routes, to adjust to the ball. And he's pro ready right now. He's been pro ready probably since he came out of high school. So that is, if you're Justin Herbert, that's the pick I think that you're advocating for. I've heard the trade down talk as well. I think that was before some of the free agency and salary cap things happened. But if I'm a Chargers fan, this is what I want. I want 4 quarterbacks in the top 4, which maybe that's why Harbaugh keeps telling everyone JJ is the greatest quarterback of all time. It's because he wants someone to do this. But
it's a win-win.
It's really good politicking if that's the case.
No doubt. I mean, McCarthy gets pushed up. It solidifies his reputation as a quarterback whisperer, and then of course he winds up with Marvin Harrison Jr. And if I may put my draft analyst hat on for just a quick second and roster building hat on for just a quick second, Joe Alt's not a left tackle. I mean, not a right tackle. He's a left tackle. Yeah. And they got Rashawn Slater there. So they're not going to go. And the one thing that everyone was talking about at the Combine during the workout is that when Alt had to sort of act like a right tackle with the drills on the field, he didn't look nearly the same as he did as a left tackle, which makes complete sense. Where do you stand on Malik Neighbors versus Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because, that's a conversation we're hearing a little bit right now, and the kid lit it up at the LSU Pro Day. Where do you stand on that, Matt?
I still think Harrison's better. They're both great, and it goes down to the flavor of ice cream analogy that we all use for scouting is they're all really good. It's just what flavor do you want? And I think it'll come down to scheme fit. Neighbors is, 70% of his production was in the slot, whereas Harrison and Rome Odunze from Washington are true outside X wide receivers. So it is going to depend on what you want at that position. But Neighbors plays like he has a jetpack on. I mean, we talk so much about comparisons. I've heard DJ Moore. I've heard Steve Smith. I've heard Tyreek Hill from NFL evaluators. So, the explosion that he has is rare. We did see that at the Pro Day with the 4.35 unofficial, the 42-inch vertical, at 199 pounds. This is not Xavier Worthy weighing $165 running a 4.2. It's a little bit different when you're at 199 pounds. But he's built like a running back who plays like a wide receiver, which is perfect for today's game where you want to get the ball out to the boundary, let guys create in space. That's his game. So I know, it's been heavily reported. I was even saying this back at the Senior Bowl. There are teams that believe Malik Neighbors is the best wide receiver in this class. There are teams that believe he's the best player in this class. Now, those teams don't need a wide receiver, they don't need a quarterback. So they're able to say that. But, it will be, I think, certainly an interesting decision, whether it's at 5 or 6 with the New York Giants or on down the line whenever that first receiver does come off the board. It's going to be interesting to see which of the 2 or even which of the 3, if you throw Odunze in there, are going to be that first player to come off.
And then, of course, sticking with the free agency changed the way things were viewed at the Combine to the way you might mock draft it now. Matt Miller here on the show. Dallas Turner at 8 to the Falcons. I think you can, maybe pen that one in because they don't need a quarterback, and they could use Dallas Turner sitting there at 8. And then Brock Bowers to the Jets at 10. I mean, the Jets have ticked a lot of boxes in free agency to allow them to take Bowers at 10. We're all sharping in Rome Odunze for the Bears. If they walk out with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze in the first 10 picks, that would be a home run. But Bowers at 10 to the Jets, that does make sense, right? I mean, Bowers' skill set for them would work, right, Matt?
Absolutely. I mean, he almost becomes their de facto slot receiver in this situation because you had Mike Williams to the outside. Obviously, they have a great young player in Garrett Wilson. They shored up both tackle spots with Morgan Moses and with Tyron Smith. So the Jets have put themselves in a best player available mentality at 10 overall. They could always backstop one of the tackle spots, knowing the injury history of Tyron Smith, the age of Morgan Moses. They're both 33 years old. But I do think it feels like they're pushing every chip to the middle. Whether it be Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh feeling like they have to win this year, 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, the core additions they've made offensively are all guys in their 30s. It feels like they're going all in. And Brock Bowers, of the players who would be available at 10, is the one most ready to contribute right away. We saw Sam Laporta have a huge impact last year at tight end for the Detroit Lions. And I think Bowers is a very similar type player who traditionally we say rookie tight ends aren't going to have a huge impact, huge production right away. I think Bowers is a difference because we've seen him play tailback at Georgia. We've seen him play slot receiver, inline tight end. He's more of an offensive weapon. So it would be fun to see how the Jets would utilize a player like that. Rodgers, traditionally, not a huge tight end thrower. That hasn't been a part of his game. But go back and look at how much he used guys like Randall Cobb on underneath option routes. And Bowers is going to fit into that role really well.
In the few minutes I have left with you, Matt, some quick hitters. In your second 10, this is where a ton of really talented linemen go. Fashanu to the Patriots would be terrific for them to cash in. One of the picks that you think they'd get from the Vikings. You got Fuaga going to the Saints. Fatanu going to Seattle would help build things up, obviously, on that line there, or leave even a little bit more. But Bo Nix to the Raiders is where I want to land here. Where do you stand on Nix versus Penix Jr. on that front?
Yeah, it all goes down to medicals. And right now where we're at, we don't have all the information on Michael Penix with the 4 straight years of season-ending injuries at Indiana. He's healthy the last 2 years at Washington. He had a fantastic pro day earlier this week. So I think right now I'm a little higher on Nix. The experience, 61 starts, the most ever in college, is certainly helpful. His ability to go from struggling at Auburn to battling that adversity and becoming a great player at Oregon. I think his underneath accuracy and timing are exactly, where the NFL's at right now. He doesn't have the hugest arm, but he has good mobility. So I think, being drafted in the top 15 is a little bit of an overdraft for Bo Nix, but everything I continue to hear is, he's robotic with his memory. He's a great leader. He executes the offense well. He's very accurate. And those guys do tend to get drafted a little bit earlier, especially when there are so many teams, like a Denver or like the Raiders, who are desperate for a quarterback right now. Even the Raiders, after signing Gardner Minshew, who I will always love as a quarterback, I think there's still an area there where they have to be looking at the future and say, we need to strike and go get our guy. And
then your final third here of the first round. So many fascinating choices here. You've got J.C. Latham to the Dolphins, who, as we all know, lost Robert Hunt. They need to start building up that line. You've got the Eagles taking a Clemson Tiger, not a Georgia Bulldog, so I'll have to push back there. Amarius Mims with Tyron Smith now with the Jets. That's a pretty big dude that you want to put on the line there. Laiatu Latu seems to be like a perfect Tampa Bay Buccaneer. So you got Vea and Latu on the same line there. Adonai Mitchell going to the Bills would be pretty sweet. Ladd McConkey adding his quick game to the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. And you do think the Chiefs go ahead and get the fastest guy in the history of the Combine? That's what you think, huh?
You got to do it. You got to do it. And even after signing Hollywood Brown to that 1-year deal, I talked to someone in Kansas City, and they said, we have ultimate flexibility now. We can go any area we want in the first round. We don't have to take a wide receiver. We don't have to take an offensive lineman. But it's just too special to have the speed of Xavier Worthy stretching the field with Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce underneath. Maybe it's just fun to think about. Maybe that's more of a Madden football move,
Yes.
but it also kind of feels like Brett Veach a little bit to have 4-2-1 speed and Patrick Mahomes throwing the deep ball would get us back to some, pre-2022 type Kansas City Chiefs football.
And the new kickoff rule with that kid, right? Like, why not?
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, he's the best return man in the draft.
Right.
You got to have two punt returns. So
you got to have two.
Yeah.
Right. You got to have two back. Why not Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy? Go ahead. Press your luck.
Well, they've got the rugby star now too.
That's right. They signed him today. Oh my goodness
Reese
gracious.
Lightning. So.
That is a great nickname. I love that. Hey, Matt, I really appreciate the time. Look for my call one more time before the draft at least, and we'll see you in Detroit. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.